Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
Yep.
And we just
did a lot about elections because it is primary day. In New Hampshire,
so
just
getting to that season.
brought up voting.
Every
and all
4
that.
years we lose our minds. It's mandatory.
Yeah.
But we did have a city council meeting last night, and since we weren't on last week, it was also the previous one. So there may be a few things maybe worth mentioning that went down. So as we mentioned, they extended the tree protection ordinance, so that's done through December 31st or until they come up with something better.
Right.
One thing that was sort of been in the offing for a little while, actually not that long, but there was a proposed what they call welcoming community ordinance.
Right. Is that new language for that? I mean, is it about this, or is it a whole new ordinance, or is it just a new?
It's a new ordinance. It's a new ordinance, but the thing is, there's a bit of a history going back to I believe about 1985.
To do with sanctuary city.
So they have these sanctuary city resolutions. Now, there's nothing binding in a resolution.
So
you basically, the city council would say it is the policy of the city council that we should blah 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 blah, and and police shouldn't cooperate in certain ways. But there was no ordinance that said thou shalt do this. It was just sort of an understanding between police department officials and policymakers and city managers. And people around the country, would sort of lambast Cambridge, the People's Republic, whatever. But
I mean, things were tense. I mean, you had Bush was we had the Iraq War, but now we have Trump, so I think it's made it more. Yeah,
it's sort of a sense of urgency. I think in a lot of people.
Things happening with ICE and the border and all that.
Right. So rather than just pass another sanctuary city resolution, and I think the term sanctuary city has become loaded.
Oh my God,
yes. So it's now become they're referring to it as a welcoming community ordinance.
Yeah.
And I believe there's something at the State House which was sort of similar language. I'm spacing out a little bit on the naming of that. But basically what it's trying to do is to say that not only as a matter of policy from the city council, but as a matter of ordinance. This is the law.
This is what the police can do,
what the police can do, can't do, whatever. What made it difficult, because they went through some ordinance committee hearings about this, is that there was a difficulty in that you really shouldn't be passing a local ordinance that explicitly contradicts federal law.
Right.
Now there's right ways and wrong ways to do that. Like if you modify or amend your ordinance to say, we'll do whatever the federal government says, then you might as well not have passed anything. Right.
But if you say we're going to do this, this, and this, except in cases where federal law kind of trumps it.
And I think as the police commissioner was asked to explain many times to counselors who didn't seem to be hearing him, is that this is really just a matter of making the statement of the law consistent, so that, because if the federal government cannot mandate you as a local municipality to start keeping and tracking people's immigrant status, because that's not your job. So you can sort of say, no, we don't have to track that. They can't oblige you to turn over things. But the thing is
they can't force you?
I mean, maybe they can.
I thought that's the whole point of saying accepting.
Right, but as Bard said, says we don't actually even keep statistics on that, so we've got nothing to turn over.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't sort of just mandate that if we reach the point where the federal government is reaching down and telling every police department and every school department everywhere
turn over anyone whose last name is
turn over. You will keep records on blood type.
Well, what if it's not even records? What if they actually say, I want to see how many students here were born in another country? Can they ask that?
I don't know. And the thing is that if they ask that, that's not really fundamentally a problem, because the presumption should be that many of those people from other countries actually came here.
But you're giving them a
legal
name, and I think that's part of the issue of this whole thing came up. It's like you're providing them.
If they raise a question and they say, well, and how many of the students in your public schools are actually so-called illegal immigrants?
Yeah, right.
well,
we don't know that.
and I say,
we don't
know. We don't
Yeah.
keep records of that.
Right.
So, and then that's completely legally defensible.
Yeah.
But what I found kind of interesting in the rhetoric, and it was totally predictable that it was going to happen, was the degree to which some city councilors were kind of going to use this as an opportunity to kind of start soapboxing about how much we despise the federal government. And fine, we can dislike what immigration officials are doing, and you can make a speech about it. That's all well and good. But the thing is that, you don't want to be basically putting into a local ordinance a statement that we will hereby refuse to comply
No, but
with
that's
all federal
not,
law.
but wait a minute, in fairness, that's not what they were asking to do. They just said, don't put in that statement except where federal, and then they wanted to put in that specific law. I thought
Right.
that was somewhat
I
reasonable.
actually agree with that.
Yeah.
So they said,
Yeah.
all right, rather than leave it be open-ended,
Yeah.
so that we will absolutely agree to comply with any federal
Well,
law.
because in one of the paragraphs, it did have this specific law, and he just wanted it to be in another one.
Yeah, so
But they didn't vote on that, and then they
Right.
went to the original language, which basically just says the federal government. So
yeah, I have to say the city council didn't exactly impress the viewership
yeah,
in their goings around about this.
I
and
think
then
some were confused by
some
what.
were very confused.
Cassandra said, "Well, why are you putting in an amendment if you're not going to vote for it?" But I understood what he was
No,
doing.
I did too, but it is a little perplexing when
yeah.
somebody says, I would like to make the following motion to change the language to
Right,
so-and-so.
even though I don't agree with it.
And when the vote
yeah.
is taken, then
Yeah.
he's the one person
But
who votes against
I understood that. But
No, it's not totally
it came
crazy.
down to the fact that the city solicitor said, "Look, because I guess it was your whatever challenge that on the state level they're going to just let the government challenge them on it, and then some people said, well, then that's going to hold up the law right now if we put it in.
Then
You're kind of covering yourself, even though eventually they could challenge it whether you put it in or not. So I just thought.
I actually kind of thought the city solicitor was pretty right on about pretty much everything she said, as is usually the case.
So the amendments then did not get put in. Is that how I understand it?
I think
or did they get put in? They did get put in. No,
I have to say it
confusing.
became so chaotic at some point that I finally said, look, they're going to do something. I'll read about it later.
Well,
ultimately, I don't think
what's interesting is that the ACLU, who usually is the barometer of like what's really,
they were totally okay with the proposed
okay with it. So I
amendments,
figured, my gosh, if they're okay with it, I'm sorry, I'm going to go along with that.
I kind of agree with that,
Yeah.
and I think that therefore I would conclude that a lot of the pontification from certain counselors was really there for the sake of pontification.
Well, it was to point out we have a horrible administration, and this is just. But we know that, so I think this is better than nothing, and it won't be challenged necessarily. Maybe it will be, but it's not going to be challenged because of.
As the city solicitor said, we want to have a law we can implement today.
Exactly.
And not have one that's subject to legal challenge, and therefore we cannot implement it at all.
But so it did pass, but it's interesting because Toomey said no on it because I think he was confused. But
maybe
because I think he
one of the things that I think is worth just mentioning kind of tangentially is that it was a lot of procedural confusion amongst our new council.
About the charter writing.
So what happened?
Something.
So here's the situation: you've got a piece of old business, namely this welcoming community ordinance. It's basically gone through the process,
right. But it's got some new amended language.
So it was sent out of committee, but with the understanding that the ordinance committee chairs and the city solicitor and the ACLU lawyer were going to kind of work out some proposed modifications. But this is timely, so let's actually move it to the full city council. It was passed to a second reading. It is as old business can get, and
but with modification.
No, it is just old business. Now,
I see.
The modifications were basically some proposed amendments that were being brought in the night of ordination.
Right. So they didn't have a chance to be discussed.
But that's the time to discuss it. So the thing is that, and so Councilor Zondervan says, well, the old business is what it is, but I'm going to exercise my charter right on this.
Because it should go to committee again to talk about these amendments. He felt there wasn't enough time.
So then he says, so I'm going to exercise my right on the charter to sort of stop all discussion on that. And the clerk, I have to say, because I think he's a great man, but the thing is he incorrectly ruled as parliamentarian that in fact that charter right was in order, when in fact it isn't. I mean, and if you think about it, it's sort of obvious why it can't possibly be. If you think about it, if you have a matter, a zoning petition, let's say, and it's put there, and its deadline is tomorrow, and it's right there, they're about to ordain it, and then somebody says, I'd like to change this provision.
But this did not have a deadline, which is...
Well, that's true, true. But the point is that if you were allowed to exercise your charter right on a proposed amendment, then if Councilor Joe Schmo comes in and says, well, I think we ought to change that height limit from 35 feet to 34 feet,
very late
and then you happen to be a councilor who didn't want the zoning petition to change at all, you would say, charter right, exercise it, stop discussion, and basically you could...
It dies.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily die, but the thing is you would not be able to do any improvements on the matter. You know, I mean, basically, if every time somebody proposes a modification, that one councilor can just say, stop discussion, we'd be doing that every week. You know, so that's never been what the charter said.
So then
the clerk made an error. The city solicitor said, well, I'm not the parliamentarian, but
it's a
I think
well, she did say it's a gray area.
I think she was being kind of kind there, you know. And then eventually Sumbul, who did a great job as mayor, she basically
called a
said,
recess.
she called a recess, said, look, this is obviously something we're not going to be sort of yelling across the room saying who understands this, so let's get together. Next thing you know, it's the mayor, city clerk, city solicitor up there consulting, and then when all was said and done, clerk came back and he gave the opposite ruling, which was the correct ruling.
So then they voted on these different amendments, and eventually, so it did pass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It did pass. I mean,
with the original language.
Yeah,
I mean,
point,
with the amended.
I think is that some version of this was going to pass either unanimously or near unanimously anyway.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know why they had to lose their minds.
I'm still
over
confused
this.
which passed though, the old one or the one that was brought in.
You know,
I still don't know.
It's such a small change, really.
Well,
that I
not
don't,
to some people, except
I know.
Yeah, all right.
I know.
Okay.
But anyway, so it was pretty wacky and wild. So
yeah, that took about 45 minutes.
I think it was kind of like the biggest.
It was
the biggest
there's
item.
no other real.
Yeah, I think the largest. Actually, I wasn't there for all the public comment, you know. So.
But the largest part was about the Indian
so
citizenship thing,
you know,
which is a serious.
It's a serious matter,
issue.
but you know, it's just like. I remember when Marjorie Egan called me up because it was a city council. Yeah, she called me up and I got quoted in an article or on a radio show some years ago because there was
RKO, probably,
there was a city council order, you know, so basically calling for like the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, and
oh my goodness.
And I'm thinking, well, yeah, great, you know, hey, I'm sure those like freedom fighters in Libya are like going, hey, looky here, hot off the press.
Well,
you know?
Didn't we have the whole nuclear
It's a city
thing,
council
though?
order.
We had the whole nuclear thing years ago.
That,
the nuclear referendum and the, I mean.
It's one thing if it's a referendum or a statement that's something that's sort of implementable locally. It's another thing if it's just sort of
but
like
you know what?
I
do think, though, in this instance, in this one, it's because is he a prime minister, president of India? He is a lot like Trump.
Yeah.
And this is coming from prejudice. It's coming, and so I think that in this case,
I don't disagree.
I think there was a saying like we need to make it known that we don't agree with this because really the same thing's going on here.
Right.
I mean, it's subtle, but it's going on here. We keep adding countries that you can't come in here.
I mean, I would say the only real relevance to Cambridge is that there's a contingent of people in
it was
Cambridge
amazing to see these incredible people
raising issues. And,
right, Indian, Pakistan.
Right, so this is really more of a statement
and
of support.
And our mayor is, her parents are
right, but I think this was really more a statement of support.
Right, but it's asking the state delegation to go on record to oppose this and to hopefully reach the federal government. So in this case, but I do think it's funny that you said we should have a foreign policy committee.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did actually have a government operations and rules committee meeting a week or something ago. I didn't make it there to discuss possible amendments to the rules.
I actually read the notes on that.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it. I read the notes. The main thing was who put in what.
Usually the changes that they
well,
want.
I didn't want. I was going to sit through the meeting, but
they want to reduce public comment to 2 minutes. Is that
No. It was more like why do they have to repeat their name again? It takes up the time of the 3 minutes, and why can't a communication be put into the agenda that day or that night, whatever? instead of
okay.
waiting to the following week, which I sort of agree. I mean, I know you have to post them, but still, it could be like late orders, I think.
Right.
But what was the other one? I thought it was it was
I don't-
Alana's
I-
because she couldn't be there. Read the transcript.
No,
because,
I'll get to
They
it,
went
yeah.
through it rule by rule with the city council, and I wasn't about to sit through 2 hours of that.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
pretty
was
boring.
interested in
Yeah.
the ones that actually got
Yeah.
discussed.
Anyway, my wisecrack joke was that, because the city council standing committees are actually a part of the city council rules.
Uh-huh.
It's a section of it, right?
Yeah.
So I said they should modify the rules to create a foreign policy.
Oh, I
committee.
know what. Mallin's was interesting. She wants a separate committee for arts and celebration. She doesn't think it should be part of the neighborhood long-term planning.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
This is the first
too.
time hearing
Yeah.
it, and I agree
Yes.
with that. The city
right.
councilors, those overworked city councilors, because don't you know, the job has changed so much since
Yeah.
1941.
They need a full-time aide.
No, it hasn't.
They need a full-time aide now. Let's not even go into that.
They
right.
need not only a
I didn't know they
research
weren't
assistant,
full-time.
but then it was an aide, then it was an aide with
So does
full-time
that mean their
benefits.
salary is going to be the same as the counselors?
Oh, and
Because it's
they-
48,000 now for
they want
supposedly part-time.
private offices they want,
Oh,
they
so-
want
all right, okay.
legislative assistants, they want
Oh, wait,
this and that.
they don't want legislative
They call their
assistants.
aides legislative assistants sometimes.
Right, well then that's why they
But, it's absurd, in my view, it's always been absurd. I actually always agreed that city council committees should have adequate support staff. Because it's the committees that are the ones who are doing the background
Yeah.
work, or should be.
Uh-huh.
Basically, what happens with city council aides, first off, virtually everyone, I don't know if it is of all the ones, I don't even know who all the individuals are today.
Yeah.
But it is generally the rule, not the exception, that you become a city council aide because you are an integral part of the political campaign of your
Yeah.
councilor.
But
So it
that's
is
the way
political
the world
patronage.
is. That-
I know, it's
that's-
political patronage.
You're going to go with who you know.
Right. And the thing is one of the primary functions, in my humble opinion, of city council aides is to basically be flag catchers for their councilors, so that they basically, if somebody says something negative about councilor so-and-so, they've got basically their eyes and ears out there with their aide who are basically sort of intervening, and they're doing stand-ins for their councilor, whatever. Fundamentally, city council aides are supporting the political future
They're
of
usually
their
doing
candidates.
the website, making sure. To me, it's more administrative.
Right.
But,
So
yeah.
city councilor's website. Well, what is that? Is
Well,
it their
that's up to
legislative website or their political campaign website? I don't think they could possibly
No.
get away with doing a political
Not a
campaign
website, but it's a
website.
newsletter.
So you do a newsletter, right?
Yeah.
But
A lot of them do that.
every legislator, from Congress people on down, your legislative newsletter is basically a publicly funded campaign piece, and it has always been that way. They call
But
that
they're not
franking
running for election. They're
privileges.
already elected. So what's the difference?
I know, but
So it's a legislative aid. Call it what it is. It counts it, whatever. I don't know.
It's an Incumbency Protection Program. It's always been, and it always will be.
Okay,
know?
so, well, that's another. All right, so you agree with the art of the others?
Oh yeah, no. I was going to
Yeah,
say was
yeah,
that
okay.
we used to have a lot more city council subcommittees. In fact, it's interesting.
yeah.
I just as a little bit of a hobby, I actually have like annual reports of City Cambridge going back through the 1800s. And
That's why you can't get into part of your house.
No. Actually, I picked up a few more recently
All right.
on eBay. But
Oh.
but the thing is that if you look at the reports of city council in the 1930s, let's say, you'll see they had committees on printing, so they could actually be in charge of publications. They had a committee on rules, a separate committee on rules. They had a
Wow.
separate committee on streets. They have a separate committee on this and that. Okay, now the planning charter came in 1941. Some things had to change because a lot of those responsibilities were passed to the city manager.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you change things. But if you look over the many years, you do see a real shifting around. What happened several council terms ago is they went into this massive consolidation to reduce to about 8 or so
Yeah.
committees.
Right.
And
So
they
they
used
kind of combine some things
yeah,
that were a
yeah.
little crazy.
So now you have the neighborhood and they used to have the
Long-term planning and
when
development
they
and
cr-
arts and celebration.
when they
I don't know.
created the neighborhood and long-term planning committee, I thought, well, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
basically dovetails into planning concerns and I always feel they should be paired with city departments.
Yeah.
So if there is a planning department or a community development department, there ought to be a committee that basically
Oh, I
focuses
see what
on
you're saying.
long-term
Yeah.
planning. If there's a Cambridge Arts Council,
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
so there is a basically that there's a public celebrations
Yeah.
budget. There we should have an arts and celebrations committee that works hand in
Yeah.
hand, developing policy, hopefully that
Yeah.
can be implemented with those. But then they started this crazy consolidation. So there's traffic and transportations, public utilities, and cable TV, and
Oh my God.
anything
that's
else involving
ridiculous.
hardware.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then
here's-
there's the economic and economic
well,
and
they
something.
joined economic development and university relations.
Right,
Those
which-
used to be two separate ones.
Yeah, that should be
Honestly, they
separate.
weren't meeting the university relations ones anyway, so
Should be,
maybe,
yeah.
sure, I can understand
Yeah.
some consolidation. But what's the other one? It's the Neighborhood and Long-Term Planning Arts and Celebration Committee. I
yeah.
mean, why are those together?
Yeah, so
They
that should be
shouldn't
separate. So I don't know what, I just, and the other Zondervan one, which actually makes sense, he said that the quorum for the smaller committees should go from 2 to 3 people, because otherwise only a couple people get to decide, and that, for committees
Well,
of 5.
Right,
It should
but
be at least
remember,
3.
there's nothing that happens
Yeah.
in committee that's binding.
True.
But the thing is typically more as a courtesy, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if the committee reports out and says this is our recommendation, as long as it's not heinous,
Yeah,
the council might very well just implement it and
Right.
support it, you know?
yeah,
But I've always felt that these committees should be more substantive, and if there is to be any extra bodies, like aides, legislative aides,
yeah,
they should be assigned to the committees.
good
And
point.
if you are-
They should work together more,
Right.
instead of little fiefdoms,
And if you
know?
happen to be the chair
Yeah.
of that committee, then you have
Yeah.
much more access to this legislative aid who
Right.
you're working with
Yeah.
your committee.
Right,
This notion that you have this person here who's taking your phone calls and
Yeah.
picking up your laundry and doing whatever,
yeah.
that's
So actually, so
ridiculous.
what you're saying is the aid should have been more to aid the council as a whole
And
and
its
work with the
committees.
committees.
Yes.
That would make sense, but I
That's-
don't think they're ever gonna change.
No, they're never going to
No,
change because
no.
it's like,
It's
you know,
now it's
you,
like,
you can't take the dish
yeah.
away from the dog, you know.
They're
the
only
thing
gonna
is-
increase it, which I just have issues with that, but.
No, I think
yeah.
they'll do that too. But you know, there's been this steady trend over the last 20 years where, you know, it used to be if you worked in City Hall and you got there early in the morning, you park behind City Hall. Well, now most of those parking spaces in our "we hate cars" era, right? Those
Well,
parking spaces are
the
now
mayor
reserved
goes-
for city
yeah.
councilors, whether they're there or not, or whether they have a car or not. You know, now if I'm a person who's working in a printing office down in the basement and I can't park there because it has to be left open for a counselor who's not going to be there.
Should only be on Mondays.
It should, and it used to be
Yeah.
for except
Yeah.
Mondays. Mondays was the day that
Right.
it was reserved,
Right.
right? You know, other than that, the
Well,
counselors could
good
just have
luck
to
on
park
that
in the
one,
neighborhood.
yeah.
And by the way, all those counselors had little placards they popped on their dash, and if they parked at a metered space, they were good to go. City business.
Or they can
right?
just take the subway or walk. Or
You
take
know?
their bikes.
Or take their bikes, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So there has been a trend.
I
So
know.
you know, with
And
every
that's supposed to
passing
be
year.
a part-time position too, but that's a joke. Counselor, I mean, some do treat it as a full-time job, fine, but I think in this day and age, and I know the average median income is very high in Cambridge, however, they get paid very well, plus they have other jobs. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly. So I just think this is wrong-headed, but there is a bit of a history, because then this relates to another issue too, which is that whenever a city manager's contract is going to be up for a vote, that becomes a time where if you are an elected official and you would like some additional benefits, where you know that it is just a little itty bitty more likely that the manager might want to
because they
be
want you to
nice to
vote.
you,
Yeah,
right? So the thing is, so if should you therefore, when the city manager is expressing his desire to have a contract extension, wouldn't that be a nice time to suggest that you got full-time aides plus?
well, what is
et cetera?
part-time anyway? Is it 30 hours? Maybe
I
it's
don't
30
know.
hours.
It's more than the minimum to get the
It's
health
more than
benefits
20,
already.
right,
Yeah.
so, because you're getting health benefits.
exactly.
Which are worth at least
Right.
$8,000 to $10,000 a year.
Right.
I
So
mean,
the order requesting, calling for
Yeah.
looking into the
Wasn't
possibility of
even
extending,
discussed,
but it was
just
in
went-
exactly
yeah.
the same meeting agenda as
February 3rd.
the letter from
Yeah.
Louis DePasquale
Oh, right,
saying
yeah.
I would like a contract extension.
Yeah.
I don't think that's much of a coincidence.
Well, whatever, we'll see
you
what
know?
happens.
And the reason why I say that, by the way, is that it's happened before.
Hmm.
It happened when they did a 23% increase in salary for city councilors. when
Ooh, in 1 year?
in one shot, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And did away with the need to ever vote your salary increases again, to make them automatic.
Oh.
You know, there was mayor elections where, in fact, in order to elect somebody mayor, there was pretty obviously an understanding that out of the mayor's office budget, they would fund aides for all the various councilors. And then one particular mayor was elected mayor basically with that understanding. And then later in the year, then that got rolled into
Oh, you
the
mean
city council
originally it
budget.
was supposed to be out of
It
the
was-
mayor? Oh.
It was
And
originally.
now they have like 5
I don't
positions
know about-
or something in the mayor's office, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know, so there's a lot of sort of shenanigans. Listen, wouldn't we all love to have assistants? You know, wouldn't it be great? I have not seen any compelling evidence that this makes these counselors better counselors.
Yeah.
And I also would say that if you're talking about city councils going back over many, many, many decades, you know, like even during the rent control years and whatever, it's not like these counselors were basically just sort of showing up, having a sandwich and a coffee and going home. I mean, they were working as
Yeah.
serious city
But-
councilors through all of those
But there
years.
really is no accountability. I mean, you're only accountable to your counselor if you're an aide. I like your idea of having them have to work together, and maybe some do. I mean, maybe there is some
Listen, for the
writing
better
things.
counselors,
Yeah.
like Craig Kelly's counselor
Craig
was Will Durbin.
What happened to
and
what happened? Who
He
was
worked
his,
with Craig in
No, I
his
know that.
initiatives as his chair
But
of
what
various
happened to
committees.
Craig's aide? Is he someone's aide this year? Or was, I
Well,
forget his
Will
name.
Durbin was then
Well, I
worked
know
in the
that. He
mayor's
became
office.
chief of staff.
Will
Okay.
is moving to Ohio, I believe. By the way.
No.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
good guy,
well,
really
good for him.
serious.
I
good
bet
guy.
there's family there.
And he's
Otherwise,
got,
why would you go
he's
to
got 2
Ohio?
kids.
I hate
and,
to say it.
It'd be great, yeah. You know, but you know the.
Oh.
Anyway, I don't know. I don't actually remember who Will. Actually, I do sort of remember his age before, and I don't
Yeah,
know
I
whether.
do too, because he helped with
But
the
you're,
whole.
but you're,
Well,
if you're a legislative aide there,
mobility.
you're tied to the individual. If the
Yeah.
individual is gone, you're gone.
yeah.
You know, unless you happen to have impressed one of the other counselors. in
Well,
which case
until
you may
Will
lose shift.
is not gone, is he now Mark's aide?
I believe
He-
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I think if you tied them more to the actual work of the committees, there may be a little bit more.
I think it's a great idea.
established
Let's see where it
notion.
goes.
It'll go nowhere, but I still think it's a great
All right,
idea.
we're running out of time.
Anyway, see you next week on
Yeah,
Cambridge
it's a
Inside
holiday.
Out.
Maybe not. We'll see.
All right.